Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to talk about reading the fine print before you buy a firearm, because many times you might find that whatever you're looking at, whatever's piqued your interest, might not best suit the application that you want to use it in. And that brings us to the FoxTrot Mike 102 that we have here today, which is a rifle loosely based on the AR15. It uses AK magazines, does chamber 5.56, has side charging, proprietary upper, proprietary lower, proprietary barrel nut. You go down the list: proprietary bolt and carrier, proprietary firing pin, proprietary firing pin spring, proprietary pin that holds the extractor in. You get my point. And if you're looking for something that is for serious applications, like Shiznit hits the fan, go-to rifle versus something that would be used for competitive shooting or just range use, then you have those two different categories. This rifle would work great in the competitive shooting side, in the range use side, but on the go-to rifle side, in my opinion, and even in Jason's opinion, this might not be your best choice. In today's video, we're going to delve into reading that fine print and understanding what it is you're purchasing and making sure you understand what it is, because this gun is a little bit different. Now, we've done videos on this, a different version of this gun that uses AR15 magazine in the past, and everything else is pretty much the same with the variations in the gas system and stuff. I won't get into that minutia, but we've talked about it in the past. It has some other little quirks. When you disassemble it, it can be a little bit dangerous. You want to make sure your face is not near the rear of it, because we launched the internal components by accident in that video that we filmed some time ago, and to this day, we never found those parts. We had to order new ones. So there are just little things like that about this gun that you're going to want to know about, but there are other guns on the market like that. So today we're going to talk about fine print, reading it, and knowing and understanding what it is you're about to purchase. If you guys are like me, I do a lot of shooting and I go through a lot of targets, especially paper and cardboard targets, and that sucks because those things are not inexpensive. They'll cost as much as $1 or more per target, especially when you get into cardboard type targets. That's where Infinity Targets comes in. They sell this new product. It's a fairly new company, and this target is designed to work with existing target holders. I have my challenge target holder here. We typically put cardboard targets on it for precision shooting. We've attached it. We used wood screws to attach it to that. A little thick for staples, but it's a rubberish type target. That means you can keep shooting it over and over again, much like the rubber dummies you've seen us use here on the channel before. This is just meant to be used with a standard target holder. And so what they say is you can shoot with a 5.56 the same 1 square inch area about 110 times before you get a hole in the target. So that means, if you're shooting the exact same spot over and over and over again, 110 times with the 5.56, you'll start to see a hole in the target, but you have this whole target to work with. So you can get thousands of rounds into this target before you have to replace it. Now, each one of these targets ranges in price between $99 and $129, but if you compare that to the cost of paper and cardboard, it's a significant savings. That, and you don't have to worry about ricochets and stuff like that and spalling like you do off a steel target, and it's safe for practicing self-defense, drawing and stuff at close range because you can shoot right through it, much like you could a cardboard target. Check out Infinity Targets. I'll put a link down below. So what is the 102? Well, as I basically touched on in the beginning of the video, it's an AR-15-ish rifle that is a take on an existing gun from FoxTrot Mike, but this one uses AK magazines, which are rock and lock 2-point locking magazines. They lock in the front on the toe, and then the mag catch actually engages the magazine in the rear. Now, generally speaking, people like these magazines because they're typically robust. The 2-point locking system versus the 1-point of the standard AR-15 Stanag magazine. People like that. You'll see people doing push-ups on their AKs in the magazines as if they're showing off something really cool. To me, it doesn't really matter. The AR-15 has great support around the magazine with its magazine well, and I've never had a problem with it dropping its magazine or the magazine breaking on insertion or anything like that. But some folks just want that AK magazine. We'll talk about that feature here in a moment. Now, this gun also has side charging, and a lot of folks like that. Now, you'll notice the T-handle's absent, so this is a side charger only. It can be moved to the other side of the gun, but if you take a look at the upper part of the handguard and the receiver, you're going to notice it's a little taller right here than your standard AR-15. That's because this is a proprietary handguard, has a cut for the charging handle. It's also taller, and a proprietary upper receiver. Now, you'll notice it does not have a forward assist on it, has a port buffer, and then we have a lower, but because it uses AK magazines, it too is proprietary. So this is not your standard run-of-the-mill AR. Now, one of the things we liked about the original rifle that we did a video on some time ago was they shoot really, really nice. These are direct gas impingement guns. Gas piston guns, in our assessment, tend to be a little bit more punchy, a little bit more jarring, move around more when they're being fired. Direct gas impingement is a smoother system of operation, so we do like that feature of this gun. But it also has a short bolt and carrier in it, so you'll notice there's no buffer tube back here. A lot of folks like that because you can put things like the Magpul stock on there, but it also changes the bolt velocity, may change the reliability, can't really speak to that. it changes the basic operation of the gun. So again, this is not your standard AR-15, has very few parts that are actually compatible with something like this rifle, which is a AR-15A2, if you will. So parts in this, the bolt and carrier, things like that, are not going to work in that gun. So that's something you want to take into consideration as we go into talking about, you know, serious purpose firearms, things that you'd use for self-defense, things you'd use for shiznit hits the fan, go-to firearms, things like that. Because if you can't get easy access to parts when the only supplier of those parts is FoxTrot Mike, that can become an issue, especially years down the road. If you're looking for those spare parts, they're out of business, or they're not making this particular model anymore, there's only one source for those parts. And if that source goes away, your gun becomes useless unless you have a 3D metal printer or you're a machinist and you can make the parts yourself. Most of us don't, and don't want to go through that even if we could. So let's talk about some of the other attributes of the 102. And this does kind of cascade over into other offerings that they offer that use the AR-15 magazines. When we first got into the rifles, the very first rifle we got that we did a video on didn't come with this piece of paper. We ordered this one because it was announced at SHOT Show last year. And when this one came, it came with this piece of paper in the box, and this piece of paper in the box changed everything, at least in terms of our perception of the firearm. So let's delve into that next and talk about what is unique about this gun and why it kind of bothers me. Guys, we were trying to be objective in the video, but it's getting tough. So the first rifle that we had that we did a previous video on, we shot it quite a bit, got it apart. We did launch parts in here because taking it apart and putting it back together can be a little bit challenging. It's very easy to launch parts. We lost parts, had to order new ones just to get the video done. But learning how to take it apart and put it back together again is just a matter of getting used to the rifle once you own it. You can do it. I watched the guys at FM at an event take it apart and put it together very quickly. And some of the competitors that they're using the guns were able to do that as well. It's just I've struggled with it. Jason's mastered it a little bit better than I have, but it's still a unique disassembly process and certainly not something I would want in a go-to rifle, certainly not in a military type firearm or anything like that. Just to kind of, I've already taken it apart off camera because I don't want to lose anything in here. You kind of have to cover everything up with your hands while you're taking it apart so you don't launch parts. You can't really see what I'm doing anyway. So, but you have this little truncated bolt and carrier. This is your recoil spring and guide rod. There's two springs, one inside of the other. And this goes into the back of the bolt carrier like this. Then your recoil rod will protrude like that, or your guide rod, I should say. And then on the rear of it, you have this cap that holds it all together, and the receiver goes in right here, kind of slides up from the bottom like that. That has a deep pocket in it, and you'll notice that the spring sets fairly deeply into that end cap, right? And that makes it difficult putting it back together, because what you want to do is just throw the bolt and carrier in there, put the spring in, put the end cap on at an angle, start low and just slide it up and call it good. Doesn't work that way. Why does it not work that way? Because that little tiny rod that protrudes through the bolt carrier has to come in at a straight angle. If you come at it like this, which is required to do what I was talking about, it'll hit the edge and you'll never get it through. You have to lift it up to get it in. So what that leaves you doing is putting your bolt and carrier in there, putting the spring guide rod in, compressing it, and there's a lot of spring tension, holding it deeply enough in the receiver so you can slide this end cap on and then get it to pop into the end of the end cap. Yeah, that's why I've lost parts in the past. So anyway, we were taking this particular rifle apart. Now we've taken the other one apart, shot it quite a bit more. This one was a brand new gun. You can actually see that we've only put about a magazine or two through it, and we lost interest in it pretty quickly because of the sheet of paper. I promise I'll get to the sheet of paper in a moment, but you'll notice that the muzzle device on it doesn't even have any carbon buildup on it yet. So we took it apart today for today's video, and we discovered that it was improperly assembled from the factory, so this gun has other problems. The first thing we noticed was taking the firing pin out of the bolt and carrier. It is not a standard firing pin. It is designed to work with a spring. And if you take a look at the spring, it's got a kink on the end of it. So we got the firing pin out, and then the spring didn't come out with the firing pin. I was wondering why, and I finally got the spring out, and I discovered that it has a kink on the end of it, and that's why it's staying in its little hole, is because that kink keeps it from being straight. So that was crammed in there and kinked at the factory. That should not have happened. But according to the sheet of paper, that's something you got to replace fairly regularly anyway. We'll talk about that here in a moment. But the showstopper for me was this one. Again, this is a factory mess up. So it has a cam pin like a standard AR-15. It's round, it has one flat on it instead of two like a standard AR-15. And then when you push it back and try to take it out, the flat has to be up against the key itself. But this one, the flat isn't cut deep enough, and I cannot, no matter how hard we try, we've tried and tried and tried, it just, we can't pry it out. I'll break the tip of my punch. Can't pry it out. Apparently, whoever put this together, it wasn't going together on its own. You couldn't just drop it in, so they probably tapped it in. But now I'm going to have to tap it out, but there's no way to tap it from the bottom. Going to have to come at it at an angle, but it wants to turn. We don't have the tools out here to get it apart. I wanted to show you what was going on, what's proprietary about the bolt itself. I'm not going to be able to actually physically show you those parts because I can't get the bolt and carrier apart without breaking something out here. So this got worse than what I had expected in terms of what I wanted to share with you about the proprietary nature of the gun. It's disassembly, reassembly. I can't even get it apart today because it was improperly assembled from the factory. So that is a problem. Now, I have no doubt that I could send it to them and they'd fix it. I'm not saying that it can't be rectified. I'm just saying it's a little bit frustrating. I'm sure you guys have felt that before in something you've purchased. So anyway, yeah, I think the next thing to talk about, you know, we've talked about the proprietary parts in the bolt and carrier. We've talked about the proprietary parts upper and lower. That appears to be a standard AR15 type firing pin in there, or I'm sorry, trigger group in there. But let's talk about this sheet of paper and some of the other proprietary parts and what really is something that, aside from all this, that you guys should take into consideration if you're looking at one of the 102s, because this is what made me set the gun aside. I wasn't originally going to do a video on it, but we decided to today because we thought it was kind of important. And this sheet of paper is what it all centers around, or it did until this happened. All right, so let's talk about this piece of paper that, that came with this particular rifle. So the piece of paper basically comes in the box and it'll have two little hourglass shaped pins. You're probably asking yourself right about now, what are those pins for? Well, those are to hold your extractor in your bolt. Yes, they're hourglass. That means they're not standard mil-spec pins. That's because they're designed to work with a firing pin and spring that are non-mil-spec. And these have a tendency to fail. Let's talk about what this sheet of paper covers. I have some notes over here, a little easier for me to read. First of all, you have to replace the bolt pin and I'm talking about this little hourglass shaped pin. You have to replace this every 1,000 rounds. Or if you take the bolt out of the carrier and you take the extractor out of the bolt, just field stripping it, this piece of paper says you're supposed to replace the hourglass pins. These apparently are prone to failure. They will break. And if they do, they claim it's a feature that the bolt, because it's inside of the bolt carrier, it will hold it all together. Even if the pin's broken, the gun should work fine until you take it apart for maintenance. Then the pin will fall out because it's broken. Then you just replace it with another one. These are proprietary pins. So once again, if they go out of business or these parts are no longer made or aren't available, they're just short on supply, you're not going to have the pins available. You can't just go use a mil-spec pin. All right. So next, I already talked about the pin being replaced every time you clean it, or every 1,000 rounds. The pin does break regularly. If the pin breaks, it will stay inside the bolt. Can't use a mil-spec pin or firing pin. Must replace the reset spring. They call this firing pin spring a reset spring. You must replace that spring every 3,000 rounds. So this one being kinked means I should probably just go ahead and replace it. Now, we jumped on the website. They do say that they sell a bolt refurb kit. Can't find it on the website. They mostly have uppers and lowers and complete guns on the website. I'm going to see if I can find the parts I need because obviously I need to replace that one because it was broken right out of the box. Now, it does, I've already said proprietary a bunch of times in this video, but it has, you know, a unique upper, lower, and rail system. So none of those parts can be replaced with just, you know, mil-spec type parts. It has a unique barrel and nut, has a taper to it. And that taper, I mean, it would seem like a good idea because it has a lot more surface area. That's why we put taper mounts on suppressors and things like that. But we noticed with the older rifle that Jason had, he went to take the barrel out at copper, and when they went to put the barrel back in, there was so much friction between the tapered nut and barrel extension that when they were tightening the barrel nut down, the little index pin that clocks the barrel in the receiver was gouging into the aluminum receiver. Too much friction, you couldn't get it properly tightened. So you'd have to put some lubrication or something on there so you can get that snugged down, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of the taper. So you have that going on. And then you have some non-standard gas tube lengths that are available. This is one of them. So this is not a standard DI gas tube length. And we also noticed with this reciprocating charging handle, you can see the spring in there. When you go to replace, switch this to the other side of the upper, you either need a really long Allen key to get to a screw that's on the face of this, or you have to take your rail off to get to the screw, then you can take this out and put it in on the other side. It's not just a simple matter of popping it out and pushing it in on the other side like so many other firearms. So that's another thing you're going to have to take into consideration. And then they tell you not to use your firing pin to take your extractor and pin out of the bolt because you can damage your firing pin. Anybody that's been in the military, you probably regularly used your firing pin to take your bolt apart, but they tell you not to do that. So when you take a look at everything all together, the problems that we encountered with this particular gun, faulty assembly, to the proprietary nature of so many of the parts, the fact that it can be a problem taking it apart and putting it back together again, the fact that you have parts that are high wear parts that break at 1,000 rounds. I mean, the paper even goes so far as to say you should clean the gun every 300 to 500 rounds. Lubricate your bolt and carrier group every 300 to 500 rounds and clean the gun well every 1,000 rounds. And if you stick to that regiment, that means you're replacing pins and springs and things like that fairly regularly. That's something that you wouldn't have to do with the standard AR-15. I have an AR-15 that I bought when I was in high school in the 80s that has never had a single pin or spring replaced in it, and the gun runs just fine, and I'm guessing that thing is well beyond 60,000 rounds. So they also tell you to clean the gun good. We've noticed that with this, with the other rifle that Jason was shooting quite a bit, that the as he put it, the DI ooze that comes out of the gun, the carbon gets up into the system where this rides, and it can become crunchy and the spring won't return it all the way. So you want to be able to clean that out. You're going to use gun scrubber. These are all things you don't have to worry about on just a standard DI AR-15 or many of the piston guns that are out there. So all this stuff combined kind of leans me towards, I really lost interest in the gun with this one and this piece of paper. And that's unfortunate because the gun does shoot really, really nice. And again, if you can put up with all this, it would make a fine range gun. It would make a fine competitive shooting rifle. There are teams out there using them competitively and they like them. I talked to the guys. They legitimately like the guns. It's just for me, I'm not a competitive shooter. Most of my guns are military type firearms because I'm a military arms collector. And so this just kind of falls down my list of interesting firearms very quickly when you take all the stuff I've shared with you in today's video into consideration. Now, it's not to say it's a bad gun. It's not to say that you shouldn't have one if you so desire one, because it does use AK mags and it's interesting. But to me, I've lost all interest in it. So anyway, I look forward to your comments down below. I'm sure some of you guys have these firearms and you think it's, you know, the cat's meow, bee's knees, whatever you want to say, and that's fine. You're certainly entitled to that opinion. This is just my opinion, and it's by no means me condemning the gun in any way. It just doesn't fit my needs. So anyway, comment down below if you have one of these. I'd like to hear what your experiences are with the FM Products AR-15s. If you would like to become part of our Patreon family and help support us here at the Military Arms channel so we can continue to bring you content like this, please follow the link in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, you got the little join button and the thanks button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Mash either one of those buttons. You can help support us right here on YouTube in the age of demonetization. Last but not least, please swing by, check out Copper Custom. Thank you for 15 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.